Good morning, everyone. I don't know why I said Tony Blair the other day. I don't know. I have no idea where that came from. I know it's Bill Blair. I don't know why I said Tony Blair. Weird. Anyway, brains are weird. CTV News is reporting protesters throwing debris, fire at moving train, act of stupidity, not terrorism. Lametti. And this is the Attorney General that replaced Jody Wilson-Raybould. So, of course it's not terrorism. Terrorism? No. We'll save the ticketing. This is back in 2015, but we'll save the ticketing for men pushing their daughters, I'm going to go with daughter, in the stroller, pink shoes. And this is from 2015, clearly, but Sudbury man upset with fine after walking near CN tracks. Yeah, I mean, he's warned that it's dangerous and against the law. Private property, don't you know? But this guy, whoa, hands off, everyone. Okay. Canada's Justice Minister David Lametti says escalating protest in solidarity with the Wet'suwet'en Nation that saw demonstrators light fires near rail tracks and throw pallets at moving trains this week was senseless, yet not an act of terrorism, as some conservatives have suggested. I want to remember what people have called terrorism on the right. And now they're saying, no, these people are just misguided and stupid. They're not terrorists. It's because they're on the left, right? They're usurping the name of the Wet'suwet'en people, and the hereditary chiefs don't have, and the Supreme Court of Canada has said this, they don't have legitimacy. The lands that they're trying to stop the blockades through, it's not recognized in Canadian law that it's theirs or the hereditary chiefs. They don't have jurisdiction. There are elected chiefs. They've all signed agreements. Anyway, it's interesting, right? That you could just say, oh, it's for St. Greta. I'm doing this for St. Greta. Everybody's like, oh man, let's just shut down the bridge. There's 3 people there with a sign. It's for St. Greta, don't you know? It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that this is tolerated. And just a few short years ago, we were on the other side. Everybody was like, yeah, man, let the man with his baby walk by the railroad tracks. No, right? Like, that's a bad idea, man. Don't do that. Maybe you should get the fine. Make your city put sidewalks if you want to go for a walk. Don't walk by the railroad tracks. But also don't let these guys blockade our critical infrastructure. But David Lametti doesn't care. David Lametti's, he's towing the line, man. He's towing the line. But it's so crazy. We've gone that round the bend. Law-abiding citizen that should be taken seriously. Evil lawbreaker. Right? Okay. Just so we're clear. Back to the article. Lametti says there's, quote, fuel being thrown onto the fire by politicians like longtime Conservative MP and party leadership contender Erin O'Toole, who stated that the acts by demonstrators who chucked snowballs, debris, and lit wooden pallets at a CN train traveling through Belleville, Ontario, constituted, quote, domestic terrorism. Quote, I think an act of stupidity, like getting in the way of a train or throwing a snowball at the train, which is exceptionally dangerous, puts your own life in danger, far from an act of terrorism, said Lametti in an interview on CTV's Question Period. The video that emerged Wednesday shows the incident at Tyendinaga, Ontario, the site of one of the blockades erected in solidarity with the group of Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs who oppose a major natural gas pipeline through their territory, triggering backlash from politicians of all party stripes. Well, while Liberal ministers like Bill, not Tony Blair, and Mark Garneau denounced the act as unsafe and inappropriate, O'Toole went a step further. And here's Erin O'Toole's tweet. It says, radicals are now setting fires underneath trains and trying to derail them. Under the criminal code, this is domestic terrorism. It's time we restored the rule of law and get Canada working again. Add your name if you're with me. And, that's just an email collection tool, so whatever. He's not going to do anything about it, right? I mean, maybe he would if he got into office. But, I mean, I don't think the CPC as a party would do anything about it. The press would just go with that like crazy, right? They demonize them. Oh, can you believe they're enforcing the law against people who are breaking that law, and the criminal code clearly says terrorism? It's just, I mean, again, it's the inversion of reality, right? Like, it's wild. Back to this. I would dispute his interpretation of the criminal code in that matter, said Lametti. If there are criminal acts, there are criminal acts and they will be prosecuted. Remember that the RCMP, the SQ, the OPP, whoever may have jurisdiction in any particular jurisdiction, have operational latitude. The government has faced mounting pressure from opposition in recent weeks to signal more overtly to police authorities to enforce the rule of law and shut down the blockades disrupting rail travel across the country. In response, Lametti said it remains up to the discretion of the regional police to decide how they move in and if they move in at all. The Wet'suwet'en Nation has made it known they wish to see RCMP leave their territory entirely before engaging in resolutory talks with the federal or provincial governments. To enable this, the Mohawk Council of Kanawake has offered up peacekeepers to patrol the area instead. The key demand is for RCMP to leave, but there is a need for policing services to offer assistance in everyday matters. We feel this can lead to an immediate de-escalation of the current crisis. Grand Chief Joseph Tokwiro Norton said in a statement released Friday. So, I mean, this goes on, right? The government's not signaling very clearly that they're going to put an end to this. And lucky us, yay, we get to suffer more disruption in a time where not only is it's going to be double-barreled, because there's going to be a bubble that goes through when the supplies finally dry up, once the rail blockades are dry up all the goods, right? All the goods that are in current warehouse are stopped, and then there's no more goods to come out. And then once all the goods are unloaded that have been waiting out on on ships outside of on the ports of Vancouver, once they get unloaded and once it all trickles through, and the Chinese slowdown is then felt, right? So I mean, there's a double-barreled bubble here, and it's going to be interesting to see it play out. I'm just going to tell you kind of where we are and where we're going. This is a National Post opinion piece by John Ivison, and he said, and the headline is "Expanding Capital Gains Tax Would Be Very Short-Sighted Approach to Fighting Federal Deficit." So where we are is after he released the fall fiscal update, that's Bill Morneau, before Christmas, Morneau made light of the pickle he's in, namely trying to implement liberal election promises while keeping deficits under control. Nobody said it was going to be easy, he joked, as he unveiled a deficit $7 billion higher than in his spring budget as a debt-to-GDP ratio that was actually, and a debt-to-GDP ratio that was actually rising, cutting loose the only fiscal anchor stopping the economy from taking off like a fire lantern. Since then, the skies have darkened considerably. Morneau boasted in December that Canada is on track to come second in the G7 in terms of economic growth. Yet the economy grew by just 0.3% in its fourth quarter of last year, its worst performance in 4 years. Since then, we've had railway strikes, global trade tensions, indigenous blockades, and the coronavirus. A source who works for Apple in the U.S. said the virus is the cause of the worst supply chain crisis in the company's history, reflected in a share price that's down 16% in the last week. If Canada were a corporate entity, its share price would also be under heavy pressure. And I scroll down. This is what they're proposing, the capital gains tax increase. The rumor floating around Ottawa is that Morneau might not be able to resist the temptation to raise the capital gains inclusion rate in his spring budget. This would have the added benefit that it could secure the NDP support for the budget, since the party campaigned on a capital gains inclusion rate of 75% in the last election. At the moment, only half of eligible capital gains are subject to tax. The move would provoke a rearguard action from industry investors, similar to the furor over suggestions that finance was considering taxing health and dental benefits 3 years ago. So interesting. This is a 25% increase, capital gains. Yay, that sounds exactly like what you think they'd do. And on to, here's another National Post talking about kind of the economy and all of the headwinds that we're facing currently, because there are multiple and they're serious. Each one by itself is serious. Coronavirus fears rail blockades could widen already ballooning federal deficit, analysts say. This is published 2 days ago, February 28th. Today is March 1st. The fast-spreading coronavirus, prolonged rail blockades, and a lackluster harvest season could widen Finance Minister Bill Morneau's upcoming budget deficit, which is already running higher than initial estimates. The Canadian economy slowed to an annualized growth rate of just 0.3% in the fourth quarter of 2019, according to Statistics Canada, the worst since a wildfire swept through northern Alberta in 2016 and shut in a large volume of oil production. Private sector investment is meanwhile expected to remain flat through 2020 amid tepid manufacturing sales and exports. The leading index on the TSX slid more than 700 points as of early Friday afternoon, reflecting fears the coronavirus could spread at an increasingly fast pace through the US and Canada and elsewhere. I scroll down a little bit. Morneau posted a deficit projection of $26.6 billion in December, well above an earlier estimate of $19.8 billion due to a higher spending and account changes. According to Finance Canada's own projections, the federal deficit widens by roughly $4.9 billion for every 1% drop in GDP. TD has trimmed back its estimates for the Canadian economy to 1.4% growth over 2020, down from 1.6% earlier this year, reflecting a general consensus among analysts. That deficit could continue to grow if effects from the virus exceed expectations. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, so the extent that we could see a deeper impact from the coronavirus, that would further weaken the starting point, he said. He stressed that the virus impacts are especially hard to predict. In 2018-19, Ottawa ran a deficit of $14.4 billion, slightly lower than it had projected, according to new data published Friday. By comparison, Ottawa was already running an $11 billion deficit over the 9 months ending December 2019, well above the $300 million surplus it was running over the same period in 2018. Morneau warned earlier this month that the virus was undoubtedly going to have an economic impact in Canada as new cases begin to emerge outside of China's borders. Beginning earlier this month, CN Rail also shut down its rail services on several crucial conduits for the better part of 2 weeks as activists blockaded rail lines as part of protests purportedly in opposition to a natural gas pipeline in British Columbia. The company has warned that weeks' worth of backlogs will have to be sorted through when the service returns to normal. I'm just going to note here that they didn't claim that the protesters were Wet'suwet'en, so hey, I mean, progress maybe. Yay. Back to the article. On Friday, Statistics Canada also cited pipeline shutdowns, a united auto workers strike that slowed automotive outputs, and global trade tensions as reasons for the slowdown. Still, analysts widely agree that the economy should recover quickly from short-term hits, particularly if the coronavirus can be contained within a reasonable timeline. Unemployment rates in Canada remain low, while tax revenues and household spending have continued to climb. We do expect the economy to bounce back in the second half of the year, we expect it to bounce back pretty vigorously, said Doug Porter, chief economist at Bank of Montreal. BMO has also trimmed back its 2020 outlook from 1.7% down to 1.2% over the year. I scroll down. Trudeau is also likely to face increasing calls for new spending measures from opposition parties as the Liberals seek to balance their minority position in the House of Commons. Already, opposition members have called on Ottawa for more spending on programs like pharmacare and social housing. So, wild, right? Like, in the face of all of that, the opposition and Trudeau considering expanding pharmacare. And it doesn't necessarily help to expand pharmacare. It just, there's more drugs maybe available to more people, but the drugs available is not a large selection, right? And anybody who's got drugs that fall outside of that, well, that's not covered, right? Hope that you have private coverage for that because, and a lot of mental health drugs, a lot of, there's tons that are just outside of like blood pressure medications, and like you can get the generic brand, but you can't get this brand, and there's all sorts of little things that they do, and it sounds good, easy soundbite for the voters, but the reality is far different, right? Far different. And so, I mean, they're like anything, there's a cloud in that silver lining, and depends on where you want to look, I suppose. Here's the Hamilton Spectator. McMaster reports student in self-isolation awaiting test results for COVID-19 after Italy visit. Okay, my question is, did he come back to the dorm and then go back to his house? That's never answered, right? Where he is like, if he's in the dorm self-isolating, that's really bad. You should get him out of the dorm. Here's the article. McMaster University is reporting one of its students is in self-isolation awaiting test results for the COVID-19 virus. In a press release, the school wrote McMaster applauds the student's proactive response in seeking medical care and following Health Canada and public health protocols and in alerting the university on Friday. The item is the lead article on the university's current events daily news website. The undergraduate student returned recently from a reading week trip to Italy, which is among the 37 countries around the world where the coronavirus has spread. The university reports that the student reported flu-like symptoms on Friday and is awaiting test results for the virus, which are expected in the coming days. Roger Coldry, McMaster's vice president administrator, said in the article that they do not want to cause alarm. Quote, "We do want to reassure the community that we are taking every precaution, even when a case is not confirmed." The article noted that McMaster is, quote, in discussion with public health officials about the case. Antonella Giancarlo, sorry if I got that wrong, a communications officer with the city, told the Spectator in an email Saturday afternoon that Hamilton Public Health Services is actively monitoring the novel coronavirus situation. She added that to date, there are no cases of the virus in the city, and the risk of contracting it in Hamilton is, quote, like the rest of Canada, remains low. So like that leads me to believe that he's not in the dorm, and maybe I'm wrong. I haven't read this article. I didn't click into it yet. I'm busy. I've got to get going. So I apologize. I'll check. Hold on. Okay, so it looks like he lives outside of the Hamilton area, and it doesn't look like he's returned to the university according to this. They don't say that he hasn't returned. They just say he lives outside the Hamilton area. So that's what it is. So interesting stuff, right? There's a lot going on in the world, and it is going to buffer the economy. It is going to buffer supply chain. It is going to buffer businesses. It has already taken out a big chunk of the Toronto stock market, the TSX. There's a lot going on, and I mean, it's not going to stop. A lot of the times I think about life like you're sliding down a steep hill trying to avoid trees, a steep snowy hill, so it's not uncomfortable really. You're just kind of sliding fast, and there's trees, and you have to dodge the trees, and some trees you miss, like you don't see, and like you don't know they're there at all, and some trees you can see that are in your way, and you kind of got to get around them, right? But in the process of getting around the tree you see, there are three that you didn't see, and maybe one takes you out, maybe one doesn't. So I mean, hopefully these buffering winds, the economy, the rail blockades, coronavirus, the incompetent government we have currently running around Ottawa, all of those things hopefully don't coalesce into something of a disaster in Canada. I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that somehow we can get through this one, and 2020's just another year with just another, man, that was crazy at the beginning, eh? I hope so. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful